Hello, and welcome to the Viva Connections SharePoint Framework bi-weekly sync. It is June 16th, 2022. I'm your host on this call, Patrick Rodgers, welcoming you back again for another call. We've got a great agenda for you this week. As always, latest updates around the SharePoint framework, patterns and practices updates across the program, new community samples. We'll do our optional picture time with Together mode. And then we've got 3 great demos from Christoph, Emmanuel, and Siddharth. So aiming for a safer content editor web part, getting started on using GitHub Codespaces, and as well MyShifts and another adaptive card extension. So really excited to see all 3 of those. But first, some quick updates to get through. If you're looking for ways to get involved in PnP and participate in the program as well as participate in these calls, very much encourage you to reach out about doing a demo. Love to get folks scheduled to do a demo. You can follow the link down there in the bottom right corner, ak.ms/m365pnp/request/demo. And we'd love to see all the great work you're doing for your companies and your customers. Of course, double check you're okay to demo it publicly, but that could be anything around SPFx, anything around any of the @PnP stuff, as well as kind of anything you're doing in this call around client-side development for Microsoft 365. Would love to have you on the call. As well, you can contribute to any of the repositories on GitHub. We'll show those links here in just a second, but that can involve reporting issues. We don't like issues, but we love to hear about them because that way we can get them fixed. Submitting pull requests as well as helping others with their issues and questions are all great ways to get involved. And you can always provide feedback. How are these calls going? Where can we help with more documentation? And generally, where else can we help? And of course, positive feedback is okay too. If we're doing something you like, we could perhaps do a little bit more of it. Moving on to the next slide, this is our page of links. I'm not going to read all these links to you, but the first section there is our developer videos. These are going to be topic focused. So if you want to learn about auth or learn about calling to the graph or using different technologies, those developer videos are going to walk you through to help you get started there. Then we've got our community videos. Those are going to be recordings of this call or other community calls, as well as various other community events and things that happen throughout the year. Great way to get caught up. Obviously, none of us have the time to go to all these calls, so that section is a great way to get involved and catch up on things you might have missed, or just review something that you saw a couple months ago and want to refresh yourself on the details. And then we've got, these are the GitHub repositories, or GitHub organizations, excuse me, I was talking about a second ago, and we've got PnP, Office Dev, Microsoft Graph, and SharePoint. All of those welcome your input and your contributions and your feedback, and so encourage you to get involved in any and all of those where you have interest. You are welcome everywhere, so hopefully you find a spot to jump in and help out. And then sample galleries, we've got tons and tons of great samples. So M365 Samples is the unified sample gallery that kind of rolls up all of the samples from across lots of different repositories. Makes it a lot easier to find stuff instead of having to hunt across GitHub. We've got team samples, SPFx web parts, adaptive card extensions, Power Platform samples, SharePoint Framework extensions, as well as list formatting samples. So all great ways to get started and learn. And all of those links can be found at aka.ms/m365/community, and encourage you to check that out. That's got links to all the community calls, links to all of these samples, all these repositories, and all of the videos. So aka.ms/m365/community. We've got a bunch of calls. So if you can't make it to all these, of course, you can always catch up again on the YouTube there. But we've got our platform call. That's the weekly call hosted by Microsoft folks, demoing what's coming new on the platform, as well as adaptive card extensions, Microsoft Identity, Office add-ins, Power Platform, Microsoft M365 and Power Platform Community, and the Viva Connections SharePoint Framework biweekly, which is the call you are on right now. All of those can be found at ak.ms/m365/calls, and that'll get you the invite to any and all of those calls if you would like to join ones perhaps you haven't heard before. Lots and lots of interesting stuff and great topics across all of those forums. And next up on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, June 21st, is the Microsoft 365 platform call. This latest news across Microsoft 365 from the engineering teams, as well as updates on monthly community contributions. And then we'll do another Together mode photo there. But we got 3 demos coming up from Rebeb, Nick, and Alex on Microsoft Graph Postman, using the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK for common operations, and getting started with the UI library for Azure Communication Services. So definitely check that out next week, or if you can't make it, of course, the recording will be available on the YouTubes for you to catch up with later. And if you have some questions about how to get started helping out, David, how would they get involved?
Well, we have a program for that, Patrick. I'm glad you asked. It's called Sharing is Caring, Friends, and it's a program that's providing hands-on guidance for you to get involved in the community in a variety of ways. Perhaps you'd like to learn how to write better in writing for the web, or you want to contribute to documentation through our community docs, or you'd like to submit a Power Platform sample, SPFx sample, or any of those plethora of sample opportunities that Patrick had mentioned. These are safe space opportunities for you to get involved in the community, where we will walk you through hand in hand together how to accomplish these tasks. Safe space opportunities because they're not recorded, so you're free to ask any and all questions you'd like, and you're going to collaborate with members of the team, members of Microsoft, MVPs, and other amazing contributors in the community. They are scheduled throughout the month. They are absolutely free to join, and we encourage you to come collaborate with us. Coming soon, hot off the heels of a build a few weeks ago, is the Power Platform Power Pages. It's going to be a two-part event for us, or two-part session, I should say, that we're going to get everyone involved in building Power Pages. And Hugo, as the new CPM, is excited to get his little hot hands on that. So be on the lookout for that date to get scheduled here soon. Now, once you do contribute, we want to show our appreciation in a formal and official way. So the recognition program is powered by Credly, and it's set up to do just that. It is going to provide you official and accredited badges. Yes, those same badges that you get when you pass a certification exam, they're going to sit right next to it, which means that you can associate them to LinkedIn. You can add them to your Twitter account. You can share them with clients and managers, letting them know you're making a difference in the community in a formal and official way. So we appreciate all that everyone has done. We ask you to please opt in. You do need to opt in to be included in the recognition program. You can do so at aka.ms/m365 PnP-recognition, and you only need to do it once, not once per year, not once per week, not once per month, just once in your whole life, and we will track you forever. But we're not stalking, we promise. Thank you for everyone for all you do. Patrick, back to you.
All right, with that, we're going to move over to Vesa for updates on the SharePoint framework.
Excellent. So let's go through this quickly. So first of all, a release candidate is the latest version of the SharePoint Framework 1.15. GA is right now scheduled to happen next week, but I cannot promise the exact date yet if there's any last minute changes on the GA. But it's pretty close on the release candidate. So if you're using release candidate, we're not expecting your code to require any other changes than updating the actual package names and references. Quick reference slide and update on how the usage is going worldwide. We do have millions and millions, tens of millions of monthly active users using components built with SharePoint Framework by our partners and customers. So really, really cool. All-time highest usage is now on Tuesday this week. So the growth is the growth curve is quite nice. So we can kind of predict where we will be within end of this calendar year. And then on the last slide, quickly on that one as well, no updates on the 1.15. Except quite important one. So it seems to be that we are getting Node.js version 16 support included in the 1.15. So we were basically bending on end-to-end testing on this one, and it seems to be that we are good to go. I'm still going to say that there might be still last minute changes if we run into any surprises, but you will see all of the notes in the GA release notes, which is coming up the next week, hopefully, or later anyway, by end of June. Back to you, Patrick.
Awesome updates there. Really excited to see the stuff coming in SPFx 1.15. That's going to be really great when that all lands. And now we'll move over to Julie for updates on PnPjs.
Yes, the PnPjs crew will be absolutely thrilled when that 1.15 drops, because we will not have the dependency to do some changes to use the version 3 release. And so speaking of the version 3 release, version 3.4 got released on June 10th, and it was mammoth. I'm just saying here we have general documentation updates, but there were a lot of them. I'm also saying various bug fixes, but there were a lot of them. Definitely go check out the changelog in our GitHub repo to see all the details on that. Some adds that we should point out. We added schedule publish to client-side pages. Patrick added paging support for the graph, which is a great add. So that means that you can get pages of information when you make calls to big collections of data like users and groups, etc. So that's a big add. We added recycle bin support to SharePoint. We added the entire bookings endpoint to the graph. And we added beta support for canceling requests. If canceling fetch requests are something that you're interested in, definitely go check that out and give us some feedback on that. And we did have to do one regression push. So version 3.4.1 was released on June 13th. That was to reverse an issue with the library not loading for the Safari iOS browser. A few versions ago, we made a change that used a lookback regex, and that was not compatible with that version of the browser. Note taken, we need to check those things. So absolutely that. If you're using Safari, definitely go to the 3.4.1. And one final push about our nightly build. So anytime anything is added, any PR is added or merged into the repo, that's going to be in the next day's V3 nightly build. So if you want to test anything, if you've submitted an issue and that test is out and you want to make sure it's working good before we get to the official release, check out that nightly build, test that out for us. That can be a big help to make sure that we get everything correct before the actual monthly builds. And as always, follow us on M365 PnPjs on Twitter for all the updates. Back to you, Patrick.
Thanks, Julie. So updates on the CLI for Microsoft 365. New preview 5.4 out with support for upgrading SPFx projects to the V115 RC0. Removed planner tasks, simplified with planner, working with planner buckets, improved retrieve list and site columns, as well as other updates. We've installed the preview version 5.4 via any of those commands there. And as well, you can use the Docker containers that are set up to nicely include all of the dependencies in an environment ready to run for everything about the CLI. So a fantastic tool to have in your tool belt. You can check out the release notes at that link there and follow at CLI Microsoft 365 on Twitter. And that will get you the latest updates, as well as ak.ms/CLI-M365 for all the docs. So I encourage you to check out the CLI had you not. Next up is SPFx reusable components. This is a set of React controls. So 3.8 brings some enhancements to the people picker, adaptive card host, and various section background fixes. And those are designed to be used in the body of your web parts or application customizers. And then we've got the React property controls. 3.7.0 version is designed to be used in the edit pane of your SharePoint Framework web parts. Thanks, of course, to all of the contributors for this and for all the contributors across all of our resources there. You can find more information about the controls and the property controls via the links down there at the bottom, which I think you can click on via Teams live share mode, and on Twitter at M365 PnP Controls. We'll get you all the latest updates around the controls. And this is a great place if you've just finished sharing is caring or looking at somewhere to jump in. The controls are a really great place because you can sort of work in a little more atomic fashion on working on some contributions there, as opposed to some of the other things that have a bit more of a learning curve. But definitely encourage you to grab these and check them out. Use them to jumpstart your projects. It'll save you a ton of time. Next up is PnP Modern Search, ak.ms/PnP Search. The July 2022 release is 4.7.0, and that is got support for adaptive card rendering, as well as various other fixes and new features you can see in the release notes. It also features release notes, so check those out. And just a reminder, the version 3 branch of the PnP search stuff is in just sort of long-term maintenance mode. I don't know that it's getting any updates at this point, so encourage you to work on updating to the V4 branch as soon as you are able. And next up is going to be Hugo telling us about the latest samples.
So we have lots of sample galleries, and we have browsers to find those samples. It allows you to find samples that people have created around extensions and web parts, and these are the latest updates. First, we have the Page Navigator by J.C. Wegebart, who's updated it to use the latest version of React, or not necessarily the latest, but we went to 16.13.1, which makes it easier to work with SPFx 1.14. We also have an update to the script editor, which is one of our favorite web parts. It was long due for an update to SPFx 1.13.1 by Felix Bonacker. I just wanted to point out that we've always seen a lot of contributors, the same contributors over and over doing amazing samples. But I'd like to point out that these two updates here are from relatively new contributors to the community. I want to make it clear that everyone is welcome to contribute to samples, either update samples or add new samples. Everyone's welcome, and we certainly appreciate everyone's work. Thank you. And with that, let's pass it to David for ACEs.
Awesome. Thank you, Hugo. We've got a new sample, card composition, multi-card view. Very cool by Marcin. Allows you to show different views within your card for different cards. Very, very cool. Check that out. And Marcin is, by the way, on PnP Weekly this week. So check that out with Vesa and Waldick as well. We have an update on the M365 groups by Nandeep with new search and grouping capabilities. So we're processing more PRs, always welcoming, as Hugo had mentioned. Everyone is welcome, and I know that we're finishing up Sharing is Caring on ACEs with Louisa and Derek Cash-Peterson as I speak. So we're very excited to have that coming soon as well. Patrick, back to you.
Great, thanks for those great updates. Awesome stuff from the community as always. And now let's move to Vesa for the optional picture time.
Yay, so let me share my screen and put the recording on as well. 1 second, I will get you in the screen in a second. We are recording already. Well, let's wait for a while and to get the full room again. We do have enough people in this call. We're hitting again most likely 150 pretty much. Oh, I didn't enable my video. Wait. Few more rows, one more row. Anybody missing? I guess we'll do the hand waving in here. Thanks everybody for joining once again. Let's do some hand waving and grab a GIF animation out of it. What are you, David, watching? Mark upstairs, yes, I know.
Yeah, I was looking up at Mark above me.
Cool, excellent everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll grab a GIF animation out of this one. Thank you everybody. Thank you for being part of the community. And back to you, Patrick.
Awesome stuff. We're going to go to Christoph. If you're ready, you can go ahead and take over the presentation and start your demo.
All right. My topic today is to talk about an old friend, the content editor web part, and its evolution into the SharePoint framework. A few of my recently published solutions. So today we're going to talk about the cherry-picked content web part, which is my flavor, so the cherry flavor of the content editor web part in SPFx. I also circled here the property parent portal, which was the topic I talked about a couple of months ago, if you're interested. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of history. It started with classic SharePoint, and there we have some of those wonderful web parts that we could use to bring any kind of external content and scripts into our pages. So today, when I look at Microsoft 365, there's a lot of those connectors that allow us to enhance the different parts of the platform. So we have connectors for Power Automate, Power BI, for Microsoft Graph as well. And this is kind of how I see the content editor web part, the script editor web part, and also the page viewer web part. These were my connectors that allowed me to bring more to the SharePoint pages at the time. So really, I have used and abused that content editor web part. It started more than 10 years ago when I created some, well, I would say, from my view, very nice functionality like the HTML calculated column and the easy tabs at the time. Now, moving into modern SharePoint. Well, unfortunately, I would say for me, the content editor web part and the script editor web part didn't make it. So now we've lost those two web parts. Something new we have is the embed web part, which is kind of a mix between the page viewer web part and I don't know what else the content editor web part may be. It has more restricted capabilities, and for example, scripts are not allowed. But fortunately, we have the SharePoint framework, and this is what allows us to bring back the content web part in a custom form. So there are a few solutions that are available on the web. I mentioned here the script editor web part, which originally was created by, so I'm not sure if I pronounce it right, Mikhail or Michael. So I just learned today that there's a fresh update to that web part. So very nice to hear that this is still alive and kicking. I also had my own flavor, which I call the dangerous content web part, and I'll explain in the next slide what I mean by that. And if you search the web again, you'll find a few others. So this you can, if you're missing the content editor web part, you can have it back with those custom SPFx solutions. Why did we lose the content editor web part? So I'm not sure I have all the explanations, but what I'm hearing from Microsoft, there's a few issues with it. First, there's a security issue. Imagine you get someone who just copy-pastes code from found on the web, and there's a risk of script injection here as a security breach. There's also the risk that the script may be broken, and in this case, it might completely break the full web page. So you lose complete access to the web page, and then you have to go to a backdoor to get it back. And so there's a governance concern here that when you make the content editor web part available, then everybody within the company can have those scripts that are stored anywhere, and you don't really have control on what's going on, how to govern it, and how to maintain it. And somebody leaves, and then you don't know where the script was. Okay, so all those issues with the classic web part, it's exactly the same, because the SharePoint Framework solutions are trying to replicate that behavior, but at the same time, it's also bringing back the exact same issues. So let's think a little bit, what are the solutions we might bring to address this and get a better content editor web part. My first idea was to bring a sanitizer and to the web part. So we remove the unsafe part, or what we don't know, the parts we don't know are safe or not. So that's available. You find some sanitizer libraries are available. It's also something that HTML, the standards are bringing now. It's more in an experimental stage, but it's going to be hopefully at some point part of the HTML standards. So for me, what it meant, I told you about the dangerous content web part, which was my equivalent of this content editor web part. So now we're moving to the safe content web part, which is the dangerous content web part with the sanitizer. Some issues, the sanitizer first, and maybe that's why it's still experimental. We are not sure that it captures all the unsafe parts. So definitely you can remove the script, you can remove the events from your code, but then there are some trickier parts that are really difficult to identify. These kind of script injections, cross-site scripting that I was talking about. So it's not, I would imagine at this point, not 100% reliable. It might be also, even if it works, it might become useless because, well, you had some nice script that did something and you remove the script, then you're left with nothing. So not a big gain here. And you still have the governance question because we haven't changed anything in the way we manage the scripts themselves, the snippets. Okay, so that's what I was thinking about. And then a couple of months ago, I captured on GitHub PnP, I came across that issue that was opened by MyZim. So I don't know MyZim, but that's the nice part about being part of this community is you can look at what others are doing, you can learn from others' ideas. And MyZim came up with another idea that I'm going to talk about because this is the one I implemented, I used for my new solution. Okay, so the simple, I would say, the simple idea here is that instead of working on the technical part of the web part and the code itself, we simply introduce some governance to the web part. And instead of having those snippets all around the place or even in external places, you decide some repositories that you're going to use where you're going to store and maintain these snippets, and you force users into those repositories. So that's the whole idea. It's a governance approach instead of a technical approach. So I would say, well, I love the idea. I would say it's a common approach when you do content management. I have a few examples on this slide. It's also kind of what the current embed web part is doing, where you can choose the locations of different sites you can pull the web pages from. And I put here the issue, so number 2228 on PnP as a reference. Okay, so now we're moving to demo time. So let me show you. And so I built that web part based on that ID, and I called it the cherry-picked web part, meaning that you only go to those snippets you've been allowed to pick. So I have already built the web part. I'm going to show a little bit of the code very soon, but that's what it looks like. So I'm going to edit mode because this mode is not really useful here. Going to edit mode, and this is the property pane of that web part, and you can see here that when I pick my file, I can only choose from a set of approved libraries. And then when I pick one library, I have that cascading selection. So I'll also show that code, a cascading selection that allows me to pick the code snippet. So the web part, this cherry-picked content web part, it comes with 16 samples. So they are self-sufficient. It means that you can just upload them to a library of your choice, and then you can run them with the sample. So I'm not going to show the 16 of them. I'm just going to cherry pick a few here. Right here, you have the Google map as an example. What would I choose here? So let me show you HTML fragments. So that's something I don't know the exact stage right now of the Markdown web part, but something I struggled a little bit with in the beginning of modern SharePoint was that the Markdown web part didn't give you a lot of layout flexibility. So that's one way to address it. It's to use this new content editor web part. Other example, the countdown here. Okay, so I know we already have a countdown, but this would be a custom one that you can implement. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is that there are two options with the content editor web part. Either you can inject the code directly in the page, or you could inject it in an iframe. So that's what I mean, and I try to reuse the, hopefully the right way, the SharePoint Framework vocabulary. So when it says isolated content here, it means that the content is injected in an iframe. If it's not isolated, then it's going to be directly injected on the page. So you have the option here to uncheck it and have it on the page. What you can see here immediately is that the text font, the font color changed and from black to white. So that's kind of the point of the iframe, this isolated content, is that it allows you to avoid any conflict if needed. It allows you to avoid any conflict between the page itself, the scripts and the CSS of the page, and the scripts and the CSS of your own snippet. Let me pull here a few more. So here, for example, I have a banner. Most of my examples, I would say in most of my examples, the iframe is the preferred way. This is kind of an exception. You see, if I want to insert a banner in my page, here, banner is really at the wrong place because it's at the top of the iframe. So what I'm going to do is uncheck that box, and then I get the banner exactly where I want it here at the top of the page. So I definitely need to move to the code, but I'm going to show you one more example because it shows something very interesting here. So one of the little additions I made to that web part was to pull, what it does, it passes the context, the web part context, over to the snippet, which means that within the snippet, you can leverage that context. And in this example, you see that I used the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So I have a lot, well, there are lots of capabilities with the toolkit. I love it. And what this web part allows you to do is take those snippets. So you just go to the snippet of MGT Explorer, and you can take those snippets and you can display them here directly in the page, because it's going to pull the context from the web part. Okay, so I'm going to move to the code. So the way it works, to make sure that those users are going to stick to the libraries, so in that sample, the libraries are hard-coded in the code itself. In my case, it's just a static list. You can see for the demo, I just added here cherry-picked samples library. You could do it in a more dynamic way, but the fundamental idea here is that the users cannot touch it. It's embedded in the web part itself. And the code checks this list in edit mode. So when you pick the snippet, it relies on this list. And also in rendering time, at rendering time, it also makes sure that the code comes from that specific list. So the code itself is very simple. I'm not going to go back to my slides, but basically what we're doing here is a one-liner. I guess most of you are familiar with the inner HTML property in JavaScript. So it's kind of the evolution of inner HTML that we're using it, which is called, so the method is called create contextual fragment. And this is the magical method that allows you to transform that text fragment into HTML elements and scripts. So just really a one-liner here. A few more things about the code to conclude that presentation. I'm using React Memo here to limit the number of refreshes. So you can imagine that because we are parsing that code, we might have quite a few elements inside here. So React Memo allows me to only refresh the code when the fragment changes, when we pull a new fragment. I was also talking about the property pane. So in my previous presentation a couple of months ago, I showed you how you could kind of bypass those built-in functions that you have available within the SharePoint framework. Here, I did the opposite. I reused the built-in functions. So I have a property pane dropdown here, and I use this to create a drop-down menu and a cascading. It's actually a cascading drop-down menu. So if you're interested in building cascading drop-down menus from those built-in functions, you can check here my code. What's important here is that it's using the onProperty pane field change method, which is a built-in method of the SharePoint framework. So I'm just going to stop here on that image and stop sharing. So this is the iframe script injection. All right.
Thank you, Christoph. Really, really cool stuff. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Patrick, who do we have next on the queue?
Yes, so we got Emmanuel for his first demo with us. So I want to welcome him to the call. And if you are ready to take over the screen, you can begin your demo. Thank you, Christo, for that awesome thing with the sanitizing the HTML and stuff. And if you have a link, you paste that there for folks to go check out the code themselves. And I see somebody's screen, so it looks like you're ready to go.
Yes, it's my screen. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me today. It's really a pleasure to be here. And so let's start to see what is the topic for today. The topic is Codespaces and SharePoint Framework, because yes, we can use Codespaces and SharePoint Framework to develop our new, let's say, your new project in the next weeks or in the next month or year. But first of all, what is GitHub Codespaces? It's a kind of development environment in the cloud, so you can access your dev environment from anywhere, from your mobile phone, from your iPad, Chromebook, from a Mac, another machine, a virtual machine, whatever you want. And it's not easy to develop, of course, from a mobile phone, but you can do it if you want. Also from an iPad. It's not easy, but you can do it. And in addition, what is great with GitHub Codespaces is also the configuration time, because you don't have to configure a new machine if you hire a new developer, or if you switch time to time to one machine to another. Like me, for example, I have at home my gaming machine for working, but I have also 3 laptops. One is for working, and the 2 others are for Netflix. But yeah, I can work also from that machine because I use Codespaces, for instance. So your development environment is on the cloud, and it's very easy to reconfigure everything. And in addition, you don't have any local repository. So this is great for 2 reasons. The first reason, you don't have the node modules folder in your on your machine, and we have a lot of nodes folder in our machine. And the second one is the intellectual property, because you don't have the source code on your machine. So if someone steals your laptop, you don't have any problem about the intellectual property of the source code. Okay. And yes, every developer can use his own private Codespaces, because you are the only owner of your Codespaces, and no one can access to your space directly. So you cannot use an excuse like it works on my machine and then someone else touch it, because it's not possible to access to other Codespaces. And you can work directly online in the browser if you want. You cannot have, let's say, Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio installed on your machine. So this is why you can work directly from the Chromebook or your mobile phone. But you can also connect Codespaces and Visual Studio Code with one click if you want. But I will show you later in the demo. Okay, and it works also in Visual Studio 2022. Is in preview, but it works as well. And you can configure your container as you want. And I mean, if you want to install the Node version 14 or 16, or you want to install the Yeoman latest version on the previous version, you can configure your container. And it's also on my demo later. Codespaces is in general availability at the moment. It's not in beta anymore. But if you were in the beta, you can still access your container in beta, and with a kind of limitation, but yes, it's possible. Okay, but how much is cost GitHub Codespaces? It's cheaper, more or less, than a new machine for working, and it's not cost very much, honestly, because if you, let's say, take a machine with 2 cores, for instance, and you work for 20 days, you spend $14 each month. So it's very cheap, honestly. And yeah, and also you have to pay also the storage, but the storage is cheaper than the machine. So for 1 gigabyte, you spend $0.07, so nothing. At the moment, you can access Codespaces from your organization account. It's not possible at the moment to access Codespaces and use Codespaces from your personal account. But maybe in a few months or years, who knows, it's possible also to use as a private user this kind of Codespaces. Okay. So let's see. I am a developer, so I like to share some code as some demos, honestly, instead of talk. So here, this is my GitHub account, and if I go to my GitHub account, and I create a new repository. Oh, sorry, not here. A new repo here called SP00001 or something similar. It's a public. Okay, I create repository just like that. Okay, if you are Codespaces enabled on your machine, okay, you can just, let's say, it's better if I create. Sorry, I create a new one. I forgot to check. Add the README and ignore file like node.js, node, and the README. And I create a repository again. Sorry for that. And here, if I click on code, as you can see here, I have the local as always, and I have also here my Codespaces tab. Okay, and here from Codespaces, if you have, let's say, Codespaces active on your account, you can create a new Codespaces directly on the main. So if I click here, I have GitHub is creating for me a new Codespaces, and it's built, it's connecting. Okay, it takes me maybe more or less 30 seconds, or okay, less than 30 seconds, maybe 3 seconds at the moment. And here you have a lot of stuff installed by default. I mean, I zoom a little bit. So you have Python, Node.js, .NET, and stuff like that. If I click here, Node version, I have the latest version of Node, for instance, and I have also an NVM, the Node version manager, just installed Python and stuff like that. But it's not ready for the SharePoint framework in this moment. Okay, so but you can configure your let's say container as you want, as I mentioned before. So if I click here and I click container, Codespaces is better. Spaces. I can configure my development container, sorry, with a lot of let's say personalization. Okay, so I can choose here Alpine or Debian, Kubernetes, or stuff like that. For instance, I can also choose Alpine. Okay, and the version of Alpine. And GitHub create for me a new dev container, and I can create, I can use this container and configure my container from this file. But of course, for SharePoint framework, you have to install, for instance, Yeoman, Gulp, a lot of stuff. Okay, so it's not, let's say, useful that every time you have to create a new dev container JSON. Okay, so this is why I create this template. It's on my GitHub account, and every time I don't like to, let's say, to show my stuff because I'm not a sales, but it's on my GitHub at the moment. So if you want, you can follow the project and customize your environment if you want. And here I created a new folder called dev container. So this is a kind of let's say best practice. Okay, so here in this folder I create two stuff. One is a JSON file called dev container JSON, and another one is a bash script file. Okay, the dev container, I define that I try to zoom a little bit. Sorry. I take the image directly from our Valdec image from Docker with the latest version of the SharePoint framework. Okay, and this is the name of the image, of course. And I also open directly the port that we are using for our SharePoint framework project. Okay, and you can also add attributes to the port like the name or yes, this label is just a name or stuff like that. And then you can also personalize your Visual Studio Code, because for instance here I install a lot of extension directly from Visual Studio Code without every time to add to this project this extension. Okay, so in this case I take the Helio extension pack for SharePoint Framework, and I install everything from there. So in this case, you have your, let's say, environment up and running in 30 seconds for SharePoint Framework. Okay, and at the end, I call a bash script that is located in the same folder here, SPF setup, and also here I call npm install, so I don't have every time to initialize with a new npm install every time my new project. And I also trust the dev cert locally. Okay, and time to time you have a problem with this command, and so you have to rebuild the container. Okay, let's see if you are lucky later during the demo. Okay, so how you can use it? This template, I mark this repository as a template, and if I click on use template, use this template, okay, I can create a new repo. Okay, it's public, but it's okay. And if I create a repository from here, as you can see here, I have the new repository with the same files as before. Okay, and here I can click again here, Codespaces, and I can create a new Codespaces. And from here, when the, let's say, the container is ready, in this case, it takes more than 30 seconds, time to time, because it needs to download the image from Docker and instances a new container and stuff like that, because the container, the default container is just allocated from GitHub, so it's more, let's say, fast. But as you can see here, maybe in less than 1 minute, you have a development environment up and running. But only the first time, because if you open again the Codespaces after maybe, not maybe, after the first time, you have the same environment up and running in 20 seconds. Okay, and from here, I have my environment, so I can start to work with the SharePoint Framework directly. Okay, for instance, I can create a new project. Okay, no, and from here I can, okay, the name of solution is web part, hello world, React web part. So, and it starts to build everything because I have everything installed on this container. As I mentioned before, Yeoman, Gulp, and stuff like that. And I also trusted the certificate. Okay. In addition, I just opened the port here in, as you can see here, I have this kind of, let's say, this link is just for you. And GitHub tried to log it in with your GitHub account at this link. So it's not public. So it's just for you. Okay. And you can access only from your account to this link. I think is not finished, but of course, also this let's say this task is more faster than on your local machine because you are in the cloud, and also the disk from GitHub is faster than your hard disk, of course. Now it takes a little bit, so I can open a previous project here, maybe. No, it's almost finished. No, I can open my old project here, and here just a container here open, so I can open the container directly. Let's see. Okay, I just opened it here in another screen. Okay, and as you can see here, I have my project up and running. So what you have to do here, of course, it's go here on server and change your server. Your initial page with your environment, dev environment. Okay, and then what you can do is open a terminal, also here, view terminal, new terminal, and launch the Gulp server. Okay, it's very easy. So it's like you work on the local machine, and after, let's say, 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, I don't know how many seconds. Okay, you start to build your project and launch your website with your dev stuff. Okay, so and then for the rest is the same. I don't have too much time, but the last thing is you can also use the browser version, but if you want, you can also open everything in Visual Studio Code if you have Visual Studio Code installed. You don't have to open Visual Studio Code and then launch Codespaces, but directly from Codespaces, you can open Visual Studio Code. And as you can see here, you start my Visual Studio Code locally, and you can use your Visual Studio Code directly with everything installed, like your, let's say, extensions and stuff like that. Okay. So this is what I like to share today with you. And done here. So this is the repository. And in the slides today, I share also my repository, but feel free to open issues, open pull requests, send pull requests, stuff like that. And here you can find my contacts. Okay, cool. Okay, thank you for your attention, guys. Cool. And I hope you start using GitHub Codespaces from tomorrow, maybe. I don't know.
So very cool stuff. Codespaces is a thing I certainly need to learn about. This was a great demo on getting started with that. Siddharth, I don't know if you are okay to do a short, quick demo. If you're set up to do that real quick, we are pretty short on time.
No problem. Patrick, I'll try to make as fast as possible.
Okay, great. Take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'll skip my introduction. I have probably given already many times. So today I'm going to show you demo about adaptive card extension to show current logged in users upcoming shift based on a select-m team. So the whole idea here of kind of creating this demo was or sample was to wherein a client, when we were showing them the Viva connection cards, they were saying that is there any option we would be able to make the adaptive card extension configurable based on the user's preference and not on the admin's preference. And then I started exploring and I was trying to find a use case. And I mean, I know we already have a Shift adaptive card extension available out of the box, but this is just an extended version to that. And in this, what we are doing is we are showing all the upcoming Shift in Quickview and the immediate upcoming Shift in the card view. And we will configure it based on the user's preference, and this user preference we are storing it in the application root folder of the SPFx in the user's OneDrive in the SPFx web client accessibility preference. I'll talk about it in a few time. And it's basically to kind of give a personalized experience in the Viva connection board. And there's also a configurable option to whether show the shift title or date as label. Okay. In terms of exploring the concept, it was more like calling the Graph API from the adaptive card extension and using Graph API to store and read the user's settings in the application personal folder, usage of multiple quick views and state management. I would like to call out a blog from Weldec through which I was able to get the reference on how to easily store the user settings in the user's OneDrive. So this is the link to that particular blog where he has nicely said how we would be able to use it in here. Quickly going to the demo. So I have kind of everything set it up. So this is my dashboard, for example, and this is the adaptive card extension we are talking about. So what it is doing is it is getting a shift from the local, from the selected or the configured team here. This would be the immediate shift, which would be upcoming for the current logged in user. If you click on view all, you would be able to see all the other shift, which would be kind of coming in the recent times. And you will also have an option to configure the team. So basically, this is what the whole idea was, to make the adaptive card extension configurable based on the current logged in user. So I can choose and I can go and find configure a different teams here. And if I click on save, if you see the adaptive card extension has kind of getting shift from a different teams itself. So this was the whole idea of kind of creating it. And if we see the data where the configurable, in this case, I just need to have the current logged in, the configured teams ID, which from where we have to get the shifts. It is stored here as an shift via settings.json file. It is nothing but a simple attribute to store the selected team ID in the user's OneDrive so that it would be configurable based on the logged in user. So coming to the code walkthrough, what we do is basically we kind of register certain views here. By default, there will be one card view and multiple quick view. One quick view to show all the upcoming shift. Then there is a quick view to show the configurable team drop-down option. and there is a success message when user clicks on a particular select or configure a particular theme. Then this is the second method, just to initialize the graph client. The next method is where we basically kind of first get the current logged in user information, his join team, and then we are able to, we are trying to get the settings.json file from the app root folder. And if it is not found, it means the user has not yet configured the adaptive card extension. And we are just showing the title like, your card has not been configured. Please select a team button to select the particular team. But if we already found that, it means we would get an HTTP URL to that particular JSON file. So in this case, to note here is that we will not be making the Graph API call, but to make the HTTP call to directly read that file, as in the content of the file in the response, and then use that JSON to basically set the selected team ID and the whole JSON as it is, right? Next, coming to once we have the team ID, which is basically user has configured, we have to make an Graph API call to team/team ID/schedule/shift, wherein we are getting all the shared shift which start time is greater than now. And then we are filtering based on the current logged in user so that we only able to see the shifts which are assigned to us. And then it's just if the length is 0, we are saying you don't have any upcoming shift, enjoy your family time kind of thing. And coming to the card view is again based on what is the state of the current data. If there is an error code, it means we did not found any shift, and we can just tell them that probably user might choose a shift team where shift app itself is not configured. Then we can show this error message. If the length is greater than 0, and if the configurable option is to show date or title in the label, then we would basically kind of choose what to display as the primary text and description in the card view. And these are pretty simple things wherein if there is an error, we would basically display error. And by the time data is getting, we are just displaying loading. Then the next thing is in the card view. Yeah, in the card view, the buttons which are there. So there are two scenarios here. Either we would be only showing the configure button if there is no shift available. But if there is shifts available, it would be view all button plus the configure teams button. And this is the configure teams view, which basically kind of shows the drop down. So more or less what we need to send here is the teams which the current logged in has joined or is part of, and the selected team ID to basically pre-configure the selected team when user clicks on configure teams button. This is the adaptive card. It's again simple, a choice set adaptive card where we have data being passed as the teams and the display name to be displayed in the drop down and the ID corresponding to it. And on save button, we would basically pass the ID to basically save it. So in action, this is where we are actually storing the selected team ID. Again, same thing, we would have to make a put request to that particular file with the data which we have, which would be just this shift team ID. And once it is saved, we are making the Graph API call again to basically change the state and everything. The next is submit message. This is very simple. As soon as user has clicked on saved, we are just showing the saved successfully error success message onto the view. Then on click of action, we are just closing the view, the success message view. The next thing is the quick view, where actually we are displaying the list of all the upcoming shifts. In this, what we need is we need to pass all the shifts which are there, the title of the quick view, the subtitle, and the description. And the adaptive card is where all the magic happens for how we are kind of displaying all the upcoming shift in a simple list view to show the display name, to show the start time, to show the end time. So all of this is more or less related to adaptive card extension, and just kind of create the adaptive card JSON and just dynamically passing data to it. Then this is the property pane configuration, where we have to choose whether we want to show the label as date or a title. So if, for example, if what we are seeing here is now the title of the particular shift, but if we want to choose and show only date, that is also kind of configurable here. Then the next thing is the again kind of in the card view, where we are just showing whether based on the condition which I have shown. And the last thing I wanted to show here is that because we are using different graph APIs, we would have to configure the permissions in the package.solution so that the SPFx solution which we would build would be able to get the data from the graph API. And this is again typical how what we do with an SPFx web part itself. So yeah, I tried to make as soon as possible, but if any queries or anything, I would love to hear that. Over to you. Thanks, Patrick.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much. Great stuff as always. So encourage folks to check out that code for really excellent examples of using those adaptive card extensions. So thank Christoph, Manuel, and Siddharth for their great demos today. Really awesome stuff from all three of you. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us here today. Thank you to all of you for joining us on the call today. The recording will be available in about 24 hours on the M365 community YouTube channel, ak.ms/m365/videos. You can follow us there on Twitter. Our next call will be in 2 Thursdays, June 30th, and we have the general dev call next Thursday at the same time, June 23rd. So all available community calls, ak.ms/m365/calls to get all the invites for those. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a great rest of your week, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.